What's going on, peeps? UFC Vegas 24 edition of the MMA DFS show. All my guys, Sal Vetri's channel. Shout out my guy, Sal Vetri. I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMA LOTN. No headdress, no turban today. We're going with the old school Lock of the Night logo. If you guys have been following me for a while, you guys know that this was one of the first ever logos that actually got made for my brand. And shout out to my guy LV, who was able to put this thing together for me. I got a bunch of hats that have it on it. Did a bunch of giveaways for it. So shout out to my guy LV for making the original one. Once again, we're going over UFC Vegas 24. So we got Robert Whittaker and Kelvin Gastelum in the main event. They were originally scheduled to fight at UFC 234 back in February of 2019. Unfortunately, the morning of the fight, Robert Whittaker has to pull out, and that's the night that we ended up getting Israel Adesanya versus Anderson Silva, which was originally in the co-main event, and since they were pushed up the morning of, they kept it as a 3-rounder rather than your normal 5-round main event that you normally get. So, different stakes this time around. Last time around, Whittaker was a champion and Gastelum was the challenger. And this time around, both guys are looking to get back into the title picture. I'd say Robert Whittaker is a little bit closer, considering that he's on a solid 2-fight winning streak, especially with wins over Darren Till and Jared Cannonier, compared to Kelvin Gastelum, who's 1-2 since he had originally fought Israel Adesanya. He's lost to Jack Hermanson, and I believe the other person that he lost to was Darren Till as well, which is funny to believe that Robert Whittaker actually has a win over him in that same amount of time. And then most recently, Kelvin Gastelum had a victory over Ian Heinisch. So he's back on track to hopefully go out there and get a title shot, if he can string together a couple wins, most notably this weekend against Robert Whittaker. All right, before we kick things off, as always, I do want to plug myself. You guys can follow me at MMA LOTN on Twitter. That's on the Instagrams as well as my YouTube channel, MMA LOTN, where you guys can follow all my betting content. Again, I'm strictly betting on there. All my DFS stuff is going to be on Sal Vetri's channel right here, so make sure you guys stay tuned here if you guys just want DFS stuff. But if you're looking for MMA betting, specifically money lines, totals, props, all that type of stuff, I got you guys covered on my channel. The link is in the description below, so make sure you guys check that out. Lastly, I do want to plug my Patreon. It's been booming this month, guys. It's been booming. We're up to 285 members as of last night. So yeah, it's a booming community. Shout out to everybody that supports your boy. You guys get a best bets and props article that goes over every single bet, giving you the best bet and the best prop for every single fight, along with my confidence rating on it. And I do give you guys a little bit of a live betting primer for every single fight too, so you know what to look for as the fight is going on, so that you're ready to make a bet depending on how the fight starts to play out. And then, yeah, we got a great Discord community there as well. 285 members. That should let you guys know how the hell the Patreon is doing. So shout out to everybody on the Patreon. Once again, the link is in the description below. All right, let's not waste any more time. Let's get into the good stuff, the stuff that you guys are here for. You guys want to hear my lock of the night play for DFS? You want to hear my dog of the night play? You want to hear my sleeper of the night play? You want to hear my fade of the night? I got you guys covered. Let's not waste too much more time. Let's get into this damn thing. Also, last thing I will say, I will be taking a couple questions and comments at the ending of the show. We're not making the show anything longer than 40-ish minutes. I'd say even 30 minutes is kind of cutting it close, depending on how long it takes me to get through my lock of the night, dog of the night, fade of the night, and sleeper of the night. And then at the tail end of the show, I'll take a couple questions and see what everybody's head is at. All right, let's get this show on the road. First and foremost, we got... I apologize. There we go. We got my lock of the night play, and it is Miss Tracy Cortez. And when Sal was putting together the video for this, I was telling him, or he was asking me, who do you want for the thumbnail? And more often than not, we go with the main event person or whoever's going to be my lock of the night play. And we stayed consistent with the lock of the night play, and that's actually going to be Tracy Cortez. And it is pretty nice that we get something nice to look at when we are looking at the thumbnail for this video. But Tracy Cortez is a beast. As beautiful as she is, she's as vicious in the octagon, and it's awesome to see considering her grapple heavy style and her wrestle heavy style. Now she trains out of the same training camp as Henry Cejudo, down there at Fight Ready. They have their head coach Santiago DeFranco. They have Eddie Cha down there. Great guys that are very that are visionaries in a sense, right? They're able to craft game plans that fit their fighters to a T, and they're able to go out there and have very solid performances. Now you see that one on Tracy Cortez's record, right? That's early in her career. That's like her first fight where she's pretty much beating the brakes off this woman and then gets caught in a guillotine choke. Since then, though, she's gotten 8-0, solid, pretty much a flawless record up until other than that first pro debut. But she's been doing work the entire time, landing takedowns, ground and pound from on top, not really seeking the finish as much. But I don't mind that, because you're looking for somebody that's going to be safe and secure, that you know is going to be able to complete takedowns and hold that top position, so we can get some solid control time. We can get some takedowns, and then the total strikes are going to start to accumulate as the fight goes on here. So I'm very confident in Tracy Cortez in this spot, as I believe that Justine Kish doesn't really have much to offer off of her back. Now, the interesting part about Justine Kish is that her last few fights have been all against strikers, and that doesn't really give you a good insight in terms of how she should perform here against a girl like Tracy Cortez. But if you go back to that Felice Herrig fight, if you go back to that Ashley Yoder fights, you see the takedowns come relatively easy for these women, and you see them pretty much be able to hold down Justine Kish without much issue. The exception being the Ashley Yoder fight. Yoder is more of a fighter that looks for submission over position, and she doesn't really have the greatest crushing top game, which allows her to hold her opponents down, which is why Justine Kish was able to muscle out of those positions and then, either reverse or get back to her feet. But Ashley Yoder did have a lot of success, with a Justine Kish who didn't really seem the most comfortable off of her back. She is more, how should I say, again, she muscles through all of her techniques when she's on the ground, rather than doing the good technical things, which is like digging the underhook, passing off to the half guard where you're able to like get on your knee and get back to your feet. With the Felice Herrig fight, you see a fighter who's able to accumulate over 9.5 minutes of control time against Justine Kish, because she has a solid top pressure game. She is more so looking to control you and do little pitter patter damage on you, rather than looking for submissions or giving you the opportunity to get back to your feet. That's what I'm expecting here for Tracy Cortez. I think she's going to land the takedowns, and she'll be strong enough on top to keep Justine Kish down. One last thing I'll say about this fight. I apologize. Let me just get a quick swig of water. One thing you'll notice about Tracy Cortez is her last two fights was actually up at 135 pounds at bantamweight, and for some reason, I believe she took those fights because she just wanted a quick turnaround. She wanted to get in there and compete quickly off of her Dana White Contender Series where she beat Maria Agapova, and she's fighting bigger women and controlling them relatively easily on the ground. The most impressive one to me was the Stephanie Egger fight. Now, a lot of people might not know who Stephanie Egger is, but she was an Olympic level judoka who has very good hips, very good throws, and very good trips, especially in those clinch situations. And Tracy Cortez held her own in those situations. She was able to kind of nullify the judo game that was coming her way, and then she was able to, even when there were throws put into the equation, she rolled very well through those situations and was still able to end up with a much more dominant position than Stephanie Egger. So the way that she was able to handle those women leads me to believe that she should have relatively little resistance here against Justine Kish, who is a solid striker. Again, she looks great in the Mazo fight for about 12.5 minutes before she gets her head kicked into orbit and then gets submitted shortly thereafter. But that's a completely different game plan. Sabina Mazo needs space to work, needs the room to get her game going, whereas Tracy Cortez is going to be looking to, Justine Kish is going to look to crowd her. She's probably going to get put on her butt relatively quickly, considering that Tracy Cortez is going to be looking to take her down rather than get in that space to get her striking going, because that's not really her game. And one last thing, I promise I said last thing about this fight, but one more thing I want to say about this is Tracy Cortez's striking is definitely getting better. It's not up to par, don't get me wrong, but it is getting better on a fight-to-fight basis. You see the confidence level growing in her every time she's going into a new fight. There is a little bit more pop on her shots. There's a little bit more confidence in her combinations, which all in all will eventually allow her to mix in her takedowns at the end of it and get this fight to the ground and, again, get the get control time, hopefully seek a submission, whatever it is. But all in all, just go out there and get that dominant decision victory. And that's exactly what I'm expecting here from Tracy Cortez. So I'm going Cortez as my DFS lock of the night play at 9,000. Not too bad of a line either, considering we got guys in the 9,200, 93, and 9,400 ranges. So yeah, I do like Tracy Cortez here. It seems like my guy John Kelly DFS was lured in by the thumbnail. I told you, Sal. I told you. It's gonna work. All right, let's get let's just shout out Prize Picks real quick. Make sure you guys check out Prize Pick again. It's like a player prop website where you just choose the over under regarding of fighters' fantasy points, and if they hit the over, you cash, but you have to get at least 2 right. I believe there's 2, 3, 4, and 5 that you can pick from. It's kind of like a parlay, but you got to choose over under correctly on all of them for the bet to cash. So if you guys use promo code UFC 100, they will match your initial deposit up to $100. And myself, I am releasing Prize Picks tips videos for you guys. So either tomorrow or later this evening, depending on whenever the lines drop, I will drop a video for you guys, and we'll put it in the description below so that you guys can check it out and see what my angle is and how I'm going to be looking to approach the Prize Picks this weekend. Last week, I believe I went 2 of 3 on the 3 tips that I gave you guys. So I'm hoping to at least complete the trifecta this weekend. So make sure you guys look out for my Prize Picks video again. Once again, that's promo code UFC 100. You guys can obviously already see it on the screen, but I love using it. You know, if you have another outlet to potentially win some money off the UFC, why not take it? And you're getting a free $100 to go out there and sprinkle some money on these girls or these fighters and try to get that cash. All right, let's move on to the next one. It seems like my guy Crash and Burn 210 got lured in by the thumbnail as well. Again, I'll get to most of these questions on the tail end of this stream. I just want to get through my my main portion and my main segments, and then we'll start doing a little bit of a Q&A to wrap up the show. All right. Dog of the night, I gotta go with Chase Sherman, and it's hilarious considering that Chase Sherman is at 7,700 and his odds currently sit at plus 100. It seems like the line is slowly going to start to flip here, and I completely understand it. However, I do have a slight hesitation regarding this fight, considering the fact that Chase Sherman is coming off of a USADA suspension. You got to give the guy a little bit of slack, though, right? He took the fight against Ike Villanueva on relatively short notice, and you know, whatever he had in his system at the time probably wasn't going to be able to get out of his system by the time that he took that USADA test. So let's cut him a little bit of a slack, right? He's not up to par with the USADA, the suspension list or the ban list or supplement list or whatever the hell it is when you're fighting on the regional scene, right? You make those changes when you come to the UFC. So I'm hoping there's not a huge drop off in terms of what we've been seeing from Chase. After he got finished or beat by Augusto Sakai, then cut, and then he's had 3 fights on the regional scene, not to mention a couple bare knuckle boxing fights, and then eventually comes back into the UFC and picks apart Ike Villanueva with a beautiful calf kick approach, and then eventually opening up his hands to put him away that way. So I'm liking the new approach that we're seeing from Chase Sherman. I like to call him Chase Sherman 2.0. He's kind of been the butt of the joke in the MMA betting community for the last several years. However, I like this new approach that he's taking. Again, center around the calf kicks and really putting his hands together behind that. It's funny to me that he's actually going to be the slightly bigger man here compared to Andrei Arlovski, who's a big dude himself. Andrei Arlovski is criminally underrated when it comes to his size, but once he starts to stare down with his opponents, people are like, oh, fuck, this guy's actually pretty big, and it is deservedly so, man. Now, Andrei Arlovski is a big dude, and he moves very well. He has solid cardio for a guy, at 42 years old, and how big he is, and not to mention the combinations that he throws are picture perfect. That's kind of been his game over his last several fights, where he's been able to turn back up and comers like Philippe Lins and Tanner Bozer, with just combination striking, remaining more active and throwing out more volume, which allowed him to get the victories there. But he doesn't really do the best in terms of racking up points for you guys, right? He doesn't really go for takedowns, no real clinch control. It's just all total strikes and significant strikes that you're getting from Andrei Arlovski, which is why he's scoring 40 and 43.6 points in his last 2 wins. Chase Sherman, on on the other hand, he gives us 100.4 points against Ike Villanueva in his return to the cage, and that's with using his new and improved skills that he's been implementing over his last several fights. I like what he brings to the table, and I truly think that he's a solid underdog to add to your lineups with a high or a high level chance of actually seeking the finish here. In terms of the odds for Sherman to win inside the distance is plus 235, but the line is starting to close as it was. Well, actually, it seemed like it was up at plus 265. Now it's down to plus 235. But I think that if he can successfully implement the calf kicking game, his hands are going to start to open up. It's not going to allow Andrei Arlovski to get out of the way of these big shots. And then we should see Chase Sherman put him out. As long as Chase Sherman's durability is up there, I think he should be fine. You know, he got KO'd by Augusto Sakai, which is obviously not the greatest look. But Andrei Arlovski's not a knockout puncher, right? Like, it's been a long time since we've seen Andrei Arlovski actually put somebody out via strikes. Ever since Andrei Arlovski has come to UFC, or at least returned to the UFC, I should say, most of his wins are coming by decision because he's out-volume these guys. He's treating it almost like a sparring session where he's not putting too much pop on his shots, so he's not really rocking, dropping, or hurting these guys. The last time he finished somebody was May of 2015, where he had that crazy war against Travis Brown at UFC 187, which earned fight of the night for a fight that only lasted 4.5 minutes. I plead you guys, if you guys have not seen Andrei Arlovski versus Travis Brown and you have Fight Pass or you can figure out your way through the dark webs, please do check that fight out. Probably one of my favorite fights of all time. The reaction from the commentators, just everything was absolutely amazing. But yeah, I got Chase Sherman here to win this fight via probably second round KO, I would say. Earlier in the week, I was thinking that he was just going to pick him apart and win by decision. But the more that I think about it, the more that he should be able to hurt Andrei Arlovski and put him away. So I'm going Chase Sherman as my dog of the night play at 7,700. I always like taking this time to remind you guys, check out Sal Vettri's Patreon, where he has a great MMA optimizer, or just optimizer in general. It's a big energy optimizer where he's able to put together and help you guys put together solid lineups to give you guys a step up on the competition for, you know, MMA, basketball, MLB, all that stuff. My guy Sal has you covered. I believe the link is in the description below. So make sure you guys check that out, especially if you guys are in the market for a new optimizer. My guy Sal Vettri has you covered. All right, let's move on to the fate of the night play, and this has got to be Lupita Godinez coming in at 9,200. You're telling me you're getting a better salaried person in Tracy Cortez, who has a much higher ceiling in terms of scoring points compared to Lupita Godinez, who's making her UFC debut against a veteran of the game in Jessica Panay, who, even though she hasn't been in the cage for about 4 years at this point in time, I think that she still offers a little bit more resistance than people are expecting her to. Even if Godinez does win, though, I expect her to win this fight strictly on the feet, and that's going to be with punches, combinations, moving forward, staying away from the ground game of Jessica Panay, which is definitely the path to victory for Panay. But I think that Godinez is going to have her beat on the feet, and she should have good enough takedown defense, especially against a girl like Jessica Panay, who, in my opinion, doesn't really have the best wrestling game. I think Godinez will do a good job of keeping it on the feet and just picking it apart from the outside. With that said, you probably are not going to be getting takedown attempts from Lupita Godinez. I'd be very surprised to see her go out there and willingly engage in these grappling situations with Jessica, which leads me to believe that we're just going to get strikes and significant strikes from Lupita. And given the new scoring system, or, you know, it's been a couple months now since they've implemented the new scoring system, this doesn't really favor a girl like Lupita, right? Should she be a minus 275 favorite? Probably, but I still do think it's a little bit too wide. But she should be able to go out there and put some solid combinations together. She has some sting on her shots too. Just watch her fight with her last fight against Vanessa Demopoulos, where she was able to capture the strawweight title that night. But that's just another example of the striking advantage that she's going to have here over Jessica Panay, who seems to have almost a similar style to Vanessa. Like, she will find most of her success by getting fights to the ground, but I think that she's going to struggle here to get Godinez down. But again, Godinez is only 5-0. She's 27. She still has a lot of time to grow and really mature into a better fighter. But stylistically speaking, I think this is a good fight for her. she should win. But with that said, I don't think that she's going to score the highest amount, and I think that you're going to get much better fighters and much better scores in that $9,000 range. Like we're talking about having Abdul Razak Al Hassan on the on that lineup. You're talking about having Tracy Cortez in the $9,000 range. You're talking about Robert Whittaker, who has 5 rounds to go out there and rack up even more points. So even Tony Gravely, who should be getting a bunch of control points, takedowns, and I think pretty much everybody in the $9,000 range might outscore Lupita Godinez. As long as Razak Al Hassan is able to get it done in the first round as he normally does. Yeah, I do think that Godinez is going to be the fade for me here. Just given her style, probably not the most fantasy sports or DraftKings friendly. All right, let's move on to my fate or sleeper of the night play. We got Gerald Meerschaert here, and this one seems a little bit iffy because everybody's like, Gerald Meerschaert, almost similar to like Chase Sherman, not the most respected in the betting community, but it's all about styles and how these guys match up. And I think this is a great stylistic matchup for him. Now, he might spend the majority of this fight on his back. Don't get me wrong. However, I do think that we'll see him very active off of his back, throwing up submissions, maybe even landing a couple shots off of his back. But Bartosz Fabinski does truly struggle against guys that have a decent jiu-jitsu background, as we've seen out of his last 3 fights. You go out there and see, the 3 wins that he has in his last 5 fights are against strikers, against guys that don't really have much off of their back and don't really have an ability to get back to their feet, because Fabinski, albeit a one-dimensional fighter, is very strong from that top position and able to hold his opponents down. But when he's fighting, grapplers, the guys that are proficient in the BJJ game, like Michel Prazeres and Andre Muniz, he gets caught in shit. He gets a little bit too desperate for takedown attempts, and sometimes he gets a little bit too lackadaisical on the ground, where he creates enough space that his opponent is allowed to, able to throw up an armbar or a triangle or whatever it is. I think that Gerald Meerschaert has the chops to go out there and potentially catch Bartosz Fabinski in a submission here. Now, like I said, you're probably not going to get takedown points here from Gerald. You're probably not going to get much control time here from Gerald, but I'm expecting a lot of people to be on Fabinski in the spot, given how, I guess mostly reliable he is when he gets his opponents to the ground. But I think that he's going to struggle here with the jiu-jitsu game of Meerschaert, who is quite crafty off the ground. Again, I think he is the weakest of those 3 guys, like Prazeres, Muniz, and Meerschaert. I think that Meerschaert is the weakest out of them, but he still has a really solid jiu-jitsu game. He's submitting Deron Winn and Trevin Giles at the in the 3rd round, showing that he has resiliency, showing that he has the ability to, slug through a one-sided contest, or at least getting worn on, and then still going out there and pulling off submissions. That's exactly what I think we're going to get here from Gerald Meerschaert, as like I said, very good off of his back, has a good submission game. The guy's 45 freaking fights. The guy's seen it all. I'm sure he's, Deron Winn, another strong wrestler that needed to get the takedowns to truly be successful, and he was able to submit him. Now, I know that Deron Winn is a far cry from Fabinski, considering that Deron Winn is 5'0" and Bartosz is a full 6 foot tall, and probably is much stronger than Deron Winn. But you gotta credit him for his durability, for his resiliency, and I think that's where we're going to see Gerald Meerschaert truly shine, is his submission attempts, and then eventually, hopefully, locking up a submission and putting Bartosz Fabinski out. So my sleeper of the night is going to be Gerald. I don't think there's going to be a lot of people on him, even though he's at 7,900. I think people are just expecting Fabinski to lay and pray here and win this fight. But I think that Gerald Meerschaert could stun some people and he could pull off that submission victory. So I'm going Gerald Meerschaert as my sleeper of the night play for this weekend. All right, let's move on to the last couple of segments here, and then we'll get into what you guys have. Let me just get rid of that. Stackable main event or not, in head-to-heads and cash games, you could probably stack this one. I think that we might see Kelvin Gastelum land a couple takedowns here and there. I do still believe that Robert Whittaker will win this fight, just off of outpointing him from the outside. But I think that Kelvin Gastelum will make a good account of himself, that this fight will probably go 5 rounds, and we should get a solid point total from both guys here. Another plug real quick for you guys: Sal Vetri's Patreon, projection tools, optimizers. He's got it all. So make sure you guys check that crap out. It's going to be, the link is in the description below. I'm always on it. You know, I mean, it's something that's helping me out, even when I'm dipping my toes in the NBA and MLB worlds. But it's obviously very helpful from the MMA perspective too. All right. My favorite plays in each range. So in the $6,000 range, we don't have much to work with, right? We got Anthony Birchak and we got Jacob Malkoun. I got to give Birchak the slight advantage here, as I believe that, Malkoun is going to get absolutely starched in that first round by Razak, and he'll give us literally no points, more than likely no points. Whereas Anthony Birchak, I think he's slightly live off of his back, given that Tony Gravely will probably look to ground him for the majority of this fight and try to grind him out. And Birchak has a really solid Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt from that 10th Planet system, and he could possibly throw up something that could catch Gravely. So if you're asking me between the two, who is more live to pull off the upset, it's got to be Birchak. All right. For the $7,000 range, I got to go with my dog of the night play here. It's going to be Chase Sherman. I think he has a solid game. Again, like I said, I already broke it down for you guys, so I don't want to get too in depth with it. But I think he picks apart Andrei Arlovski with the calf kicks, and then eventually opens up with the hands and possibly knocks him out. Also, another guy that's not actually on the salary list yet is Mr. Dakota Bush. He's a very solid underdog spot, in my opinion, as I believe his wrestling will probably come into play here against Austin Hubbard. And Austin Hubbard's had no gifts in the UFC. 4 of his 5 fights have been against grapplers, and he's gone 1-3, I believe, against them at this point. 3 solid grapplers, and he's gone 1-2. But yeah, Dakota Bush should give him some issues here, and he's currently around plus 155, plus 160. So I'm assuming that they'll probably plug him in around that 72 to 7,500 range, and I think he's a very good spot here as a solid underdog spot. So keep your eye on Dakota Bush whenever they do end up updating the DraftKings lineups. All right, $8,000 range, I got to go with my guy Alexander Romanov. I think he's the one. He should be landing takedowns here, and he should possibly get a finish in that second round. And I think he's most likely to get a finish and accrue a bunch of control time, especially compared to the rest of that $8,000 field. Right, that a lot of the majority of that $8,000 field, I actually think ends up losing. Right, you got Luis Pena. I think he loses. Josiah Nunes, I think she loses. Andrei Arlovski, I think he loses. Jeremy Stevens, I think he wins, but I think that Romanov will probably have the potential for a higher ceiling. Bartosz Fabinski, I think he loses, but again, if he wins, he probably racks up 100 points. I am more confident in Romanov than I am Fabinski. And then Austin Hubbard's probably going to be plugged in there too. And I think that Romanov will have a higher chance of scoring much higher points. All right. And then the $9,000 range, got to go with the lock of the night, DFS lock of the night, I should say, and Tracy Cortez here at that $9,000 range. Considering that I expect her to get takedowns, control time, significant strikes, total strikes, whatever it is, I think that this fight is heavily in the favor of Cortez, and Keisha's going to have a ton of issues trying to get back to her feet and dealing with the grappling onslaught that Tracy Cortez brings to the table. Again, Abdul Razak Al-Hassan is a solid play at 9,300 as well, considering that he should go out there and get that first round victory. And I think that he might be optimal, but I think that Cortez will still give us a solid score, even with this fight going to a decision. I'm expecting her to have a ton of control time. All right, that's pretty much a wrap on the main segments here that I have. Again, once again, a big shout out to Prize Picks, the main sponsor for the show. You use a promo code UFC 100 and they'll match your initial deposit up to $100. That's the way to do it. That is the way to do it for Prize Picks. Very solid prop betting website where you pick an over under on the fantasy points, and they will pay you out if you get that shit right. Just a reminder, I will drop my Prize Picks either later this evening or tomorrow to give you guys your best Prize Picks tips. Try to say Prize Picks tips quickly 3 times, and you'll sound as dumb as I do. But yeah, shout out Prize Picks for sponsoring the show as always. And then you guys can follow me at MMALOTN on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And then obviously my own Patreon, which is in the link is in the description below. A ton of value, $5 a month. Your boy's holding you down. So if we have any comments or questions on the back end here, I'll go through them. I'm not gonna rifle through it and drag you guys through this too much longer if there aren't any questions, comments, or concerns. And then we'll get to the end of the show here. So once again, my guy John Kelly was swayed in by the Tracy Cortez thumbnail. Shout out to my guy Salvetri for actually coming through with that. Crash and Burn 210 is saying, I think you and of course Griffin himself were robbed last week by the judges in their pick versus Saldana last week. Judges were particularly bad last week. And yeah, I agree. I had Griffin winning that fight, and I believe I had Griffin as my dog of the night play. And yeah, that really did end up shit in the bed for us. You know, you can do your best to study up on these fighters and see who has the advantage and who should win these fights, but you can't control the judges and what they're watching. Now, I'm not going to say it's the worst robbery that I've ever seen. That fight was definitely close. Saldana was getting some solid shots off on the feet, but I thought the control time, the takedowns, and all that from Jordan Griffin were more than enough to award him the victory that weekend. But we end up on the shit side of a bad decision, so that really sucks. My guy Charlie Nunn is asking, do I have any takes for Askren versus Paul? Ugh. That's my take. That is my take. I actually had somebody hit me up in the MMA community that wants me to give them just a quick blurb about the fight, but literally been the only thing that I've pretty much seen is that weird Jake Paul stretching video thing, right? That's my like, are you kidding me? But yeah, I think Paul should win considering that he, has been more focused on boxing over the last several years, whereas Ben Askren, his hands will never look good. If anything, if you're looking at back Askren, you're hoping that he is able to survive the initial onslaught and then maybe start to take over late. But again, there's no tape study going into this shit. It's a shit show. I'm keeping my money far off from it. Crush and Burn 210 was also lured in by the thumbnail. My guy Moy's Audio in the chat. What's going on, my brother? I appreciate you stopping by. John Kelly DFS is saying, legitimately shocked they gave Saldana 2 rounds. Yeah. That's MMA judging for you, right? Like, you don't really get consistency, and it sucks, especially as a bettor when you're like, this is what the fighters should or they should be looking for, and if it's not, then we're kind of fucked here. Crash and Burn is saying, who do you like for cash lineups? Again, I'm big on Saldana in this spot, or sorry, on Cortez on the spot. Fighters that I think should win, though, right? Like, that's kind of what you want to be focusing on for cash games. Yeah, I like Gravely. I like Cortez. I like Romanov. I think Farron is a decent spot considering that she's a dog and she's only at 7,600. But I think that line is actually going to end up flipping as well. And I think that Stevens is a good spot as well. So I hope that helps you out, my guy. Crash and Burn 210. Moisadio is saying Saldana won via damage. He said Griffin's butt 2 times via calf kicks. Funny how they won't acknowledge that as knockdowns. However, a cut to the body would have been true, or a kick to the body, I'm assuming. Travis Duarte had all wins, but Griffin, that sucked for sure. Yeah. Again, Moise is making a solid point here as well. Damage was definitely from the Saldana side, but it's very tough to truly be confident on either side here, right? Let's see what MMA Decisions had. That's usually kind of my Bible when it comes to seeing what the wisdom of the crowd was saying. So all 3 judges did have it for Luis. Not to mention one of those judges was Adelaide Bird. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 media members that had it for Griffin and 2 that had it for Saldana. Now, in terms of 78 fan submitted scorecards, 65% of those 78 votes were 29-28 for Jordan Griffin. We do not have a round by round individual scoring yet. That's something that MMA Decisions does very well. So I'm sure that we're still waiting for that. And then the second best outcome was 16.7% for Saldana to win 29-28. So yeah, that's teetering a little bit. Yeah, Moise, I got it. And he's saying 90% of media scored it for Griffin. Yeah, so there you have it. Moyes thought Griffin won round 2 and 3. See, it's shitty that we have to deal with this in MMA, right? Because you're also talking about Griffin, a guy who's only going with half his paycheck now, right? It's not just us losing our bets or our DraftKings lines getting screwed by not getting the decision. Think about it from the fighter's perspective. You got to think about it from Griffin's perspective, who's probably expecting to go home with 40K that he just won, but now he's only going home with 20K because the judges thought the other guy won. It is what it is. All right. I'm going to wrap this thing up. Appreciate everybody checking it out as always. Make sure you guys like and support, like and subscribe the video as well, because Salvetri will definitely see that you guys are digging this thing. I appreciate the support as always. Again, if you guys want more of a betting perspective from this, go check out my channel where I'm able to break this the cards down from bottom to top from a betting perspective as well. Tomorrow morning, I'll be doing a live stream for Bellator. Just so you guys can get a perspective there in terms of what I'm looking at for Bellator 2. So I got you guys covered on the betting side. Sal's got you covered on the DFS side. I believe he's going to be doing a fight day stream. I believe he's been doing that for the last couple of streams as well. So make sure you guys check that out. So support the channel, support the show. Appreciate you guys checking out. Good luck on your lineups this weekend. And I'll see you guys next week for another edition. And I think it's actually a pay-per-view edition. We got UFC 261 coming up where we got 3 title fights. I'm more than excited to break it down for you guys. And obviously, whenever there's a pay-per-view, there's usually a big prize pool on the DraftKings side of things. So I can't wait to break that down for you guys and hopefully catch some tickets. And hopefully we can get one of you guys on the Salvetri army in that top 3 or in that big podium for the big tournament. So we'll see how that plays out. All right. Appreciate you guys checking out the show as always. Peace.